possible in this period of time. And we've obviously made a great deal of progress on that front. I don't have anything more to preview for you in terms of what that will look like. We first need to focus on, right now we're still in a circumstance where there isn't enough supply for the number of Americans who want to get the vaccination. So that's really our focus at this point in time. But certainly it's a point of discussion with his counterparts and with the counterparts of other members of our national security team.
So you don't want to say anything about the waiver?
I don't have anything more for you to predict.
Okay, and then on that question of vaccinating children, you mentioned that you're not sure which vaccine will be most effective. Fauci has talked about getting high school students vaccinated by the fall and elementary school kids in the spring. Do you have a sense of when every American could be vaccinated? I mean, you've talked about having enough on hand for adults to be vaccinated by the summer, or by the end of May, actually.
Well, we will have enough supply, right? But the president is the first to say that we can't do this alone, and that certainly a component of this that is vitally important is ensuring that people understand across the country that these vaccines are safe and they are effective. And we are still going to focus on combating the issues of misinformation and, of course, of vaccine hesitancy in a range of communities. The FDA, as you know, would be the ones running point on approval of vaccines for children. I can't really predict when children will be vaccinated, and we don't know when the FDA may approve a vaccine. But our role is ensuring there's enough supply and that there is enough distribution. We've made a great deal of progress on that. More work to be done, but I can't make any predictions beyond that. Go ahead.
On a couple things. First, President Biden, when he was vice president, kind of was the person who ran point on the 2009 recovery bill. Would you expect that Vice President Harris might take on a similar role? He has, done a lot, put her in a very similar position to the one that he had with President Obama.
Well, that's true. I mean, the president has said that he wants the vice president to be the first in the room and the last in the room when he has important briefings, when there are important policy decisions and discussions that are taking place. And that certainly is how he is operating, or they are operating as a team together. In terms of what role she may play in the implementation, I don't have anything to preview for you on that. She will certainly be traveling. She's a key voice and asset for the administration, and she'll be communicating about the impact of the American Rescue Plan and how it's going to help the American people over the course of the next few weeks.
Ron Klain said last night that the president's speech to a joint session of Congress won't be for a few weeks, and he was kind of suggesting that there is going to be this time period where the administration is focused on promoting the bill that just passed. Can you kind of confirm that and provide any more information on sort of how you're thinking about the rest of March into April, promoting this ARP versus moving on to the Build Back Better?
Sure. I don't have an exact breakdown of timeline, and I don't think Ron was intending to give one either, only to convey, which is I think why you're asking, that the president, the vice president, and all of us in the administration believe it's important to take a moment to, or a few moments, I should say, to communicate directly with the American people about the benefits of the package, to ensure they understand that help is on the way in a range of forms, and to do that in communities and directly with people who we are hoping understand the benefits of this package. So I expect that to mean a couple of trips for the president, the vice president, and others, but I don't have kind of an end date for that. And certainly part of the focus internally is on ongoing discussions about what is next and what components of the president's Build Back Better agenda, what the order is, the format, the size, and those decisions haven't been finalized quite yet.
And then one other thing that you kind of hinted you might have an answer for yesterday, which is another thing related to Ron, the National Clearinghouse for Vaccine Information. We here in the Bloomberg seat are very interested in your answer on that.
I'm very excited about the website, which many people are. I would say, as you know, the website is being implemented as a vaccine finder, I should say, is being implemented as a pilot program. We've always been open to expanding the pilot program, and we're certainly looking into that. We're also looking into, and others have asked this question, how we can better assist state and local governments who have their own websites where they are utilized by members of the local community and effective, but sometimes they have technical issues. So we're looking at addressing it from a couple of different directions, but every option remains on the table. We're also considering setting up call centers, organizing navigators, help individuals schedule appointments, which sometimes can be the issue. So I don't have a major update other than to convey that it's a pilot program. We've always been open to expanding it, and certainly a range of options remain on the table. And sometimes in some states, their local website is working quite well, and they just need some technical assistance. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. You've been telling migrants from right there for a month now, all the way back to February 10th, that now is not the time to come, but they are coming in bigger numbers every day. So do you have a messaging problem?
Well, I would say that in the last administration, we had a morality problem, and children were being pulled from the arms of their parents, and kids were being sent back on a treacherous journey, and that's not the approach of this administration. So certainly we understand that means there will be more kids who are crossing the border. We made a policy decision that that was the right, humane step to take. But I think it's also important for people to understand that the vast majority of people who come to our border are turned away, are sent back to their countries. What we're talking about here are unaccompanied children, and what our focus is on is ensuring that there are safe places for these kids to go that have access, where they have access to educational resources, health and medical attention, legal assistance as needed, and that we can expedite the vetting so that they can get to families and sponsors where they can have their cases adjudicated.
But since the last administration is gone, tomorrow is 50 days of Biden. There are migrants showing up wearing T-shirts that say, "Biden, please let us in." And candidate Biden is the one who said, "I would end this notion for the first time in history that people seeking asylum have to be in squalor on the other side of the river." Why doesn't he come out and just say, now is not the time?
Well, he actually did an interview with Univision about a week and a half ago where he conveyed a similar message, and we've conveyed that at every opportunity that we have. I will say we are, as you noted, almost 50 days in. We are digging ourselves out of a broken and dismantled system. Roberta Messer-Jacobson referenced this in her opening as well. When it comes to engagement with countries addressing the root causes, we couldn't start doing that until January 20th. There are programs like the relaunching of the Central American Minors Program, which was ended by the prior administration in 2017, and that meant that that program, which would have allowed for people to apply from the region, we had to restart that program. So we're working to fix the mess of the last couple of years. It's going to take some time, but this is clearly a priority for the president. We're looking at a range of options, which include the opening of additional facilities. It includes steps we can take to expedite the processing. It includes application and implementation of these CDC guidelines that just came out that allow for more children to be housed safely in these facilities. So we're looking at every option possible to help address the challenges we're facing at the border.
And you mentioned those CDC guidelines. Does the White House think it's a problem that when the CDC tells these migrant shelter facilities that they can be at full capacity if they are careful about COVID, many of them do, but when the CDC tells schools that they can open in person at full capacity, many of them don't?
Is there a school in particular that you have as an example that didn't do that?
Are most schools in this country at full capacity with in-person learning?
Is there a specific school, though, that is not following the CDC guidelines of implementing the mitigation steps so they can reopen?
I mean, the CDC is saying schools, you can be every school can be at full capacity.
What the CDC guidelines, just to be clear, because I think this is very important to be very clear and specific on, they gave 8 mitigation steps that schools can take to safely reopen. A number of schools have actually recently reopened. Schools in Washington, D.C., some have, schools in many districts across the country. But each school district needs to make the decision about whether they are able to take those mitigation steps. The president has also been clear, some of these school districts need additional funding. There's $160 billion in this package that he's going to sign into law later this week. The Secretary of Education will be quite focused on working with school districts to help them reopen. But more school districts are reopening, more kids are in classrooms every single day.
But since they are not all back, from an administration position or from your perspective, have the Border Patrol unions and the HHS unions been easier to work with than the teachers' unions?
I think that's a little bit of mixing different circumstances. I would say that
It's children all in tight quarters. I mean, a classroom.
not quite.
Not funny.
Not quite. I would say that let's take a responsible approach to the two issues. Okay, one is schools reopening. There's been 8 mitigation steps that have been announced by the CDC to implement. Right.
Yeah.
Every school district is going to work to implement those on a timeline that is they can effectively do. Many school districts are reopening, right? Many are reopening every single week and day and week, right? That is a different circumstance than what we are seeing at the border. And the HHS oversees these facilities, right? They're working on ensuring we can have more kids safely. They are working to implement CDC guidelines, but they are different circumstances, and certainly we're working with the school districts, and we're also working with HHS to open these facilities, or to ensure that kids are treated with safety and care in these facilities. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just a little bit more on the Quad. You mentioned yesterday that one of the issues that will be discussed is how the leaders can work together to combat the pandemic. Might that discussion include a strategy to counter vaccine diplomacy from China and Russia?
I think there'll be a range of topics discussed, and I know that it is a concern of a number of leaders around the world, including, of course, President Biden, and I'm sure we'll have a readout of the Quad meeting tomorrow once it's completed.
Just a little bit more on the announcement, if you can preview it. Can we expect anything in terms of how the Quad, what kind of commitment they would give in terms of helping other countries to access vaccines?
Again, I know they'll discuss a range of issues tomorrow, but I think it's important to just take a little bit of a step back, because this is a meeting that covers a range of topics. Of course, I'm sure COVID, which is a pandemic everyone in the world is dealing with, will be a topic of discussion, but there'll be issues like climate that are addressed, economic cooperation. I'm sure they'll have a range of issues to bring up, and we will provide a readout when the meeting concludes tomorrow.
A little bit more on that. What about in terms of the military balance? I mean, we know that China just announced a huge defense spending, 6.8%, I believe, for this year. Is that also a top item in the agenda?
I don't think I have more to preview than what we've already offered. We will, of course, have a readout when the meeting concludes. There are a range of topics on the minds of all of these leaders. As I've noted in here before, we anticipate the meeting discussing a range of the crises we're facing as a global community, from COVID to climate, economic cooperation. I'm sure they all will bring up a number of issues, and we'll have a robust readout when the meeting concludes. Go ahead.
A few questions, like everyone. In California, Republicans are seeking to nationalize the recall effort against Governor Gavin Newsom and really make it a referendum on COVID policies. You know, the other day, Bernie Sanders tweeted that it's time for Democrats to unite and rally on Newsom's behalf against the recall. Does the president have any plans to personally or otherwise support Newsom if this does make it on the ballot and becomes an off-year campaign?
We're not quite there yet. We've spoken out in support of Governor Newsom and against the recall, so that remains our position.
All right. Also in California, we at the San Francisco Chronicle are finding that school districts are saying, even with this influx of money coming from the package, there's still lots of reasons they're not sure if they can reopen even, by this fall, including building consensus around how to do it. There's been some criticism that the CDC guidance is actually too conservative and prohibitive, including the 6 feet distance rule that schools either have to ignore or not open. If there are still schools that aren't open by this fall, would the administration consider it a failure, and what more could they possibly do to help those schools along?
We have several months before the fall, 6 months, 5 months. Okay, I will stop doing math now. This is our Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. This is his #1 priority, what he is focused on. The president has asked him to lead this effort, and he is holding a school summit. He will be working with school districts, including, I'm sure, in California and San Francisco and others, to work to address what they feel the challenges are to reopening, whether it's funding that's needed, whether it's consensus building that needs to happen. The president wants schools to be open 5 days a week, wants kids to be learning in school, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that's happening.
And lastly, on the subject of today's briefing, immigration and border policy, it covers so many different agencies. There's Homeland Security, there's HHS, as we've discussed, there's State Department, Department of Justice, which we don't talk about as much, has a huge piece of this. Is there someone in this administration who is coordinating all of these disparate pieces? Ultimately, where does the buck stop? Who is making sure that all these different agencies are coordinating to the administration's overall goals?
Well, ultimately, the president is responsible for the policy on key issues and key challenges the country is facing, and immigration is certainly one of them. You're right, there are a number of agencies involved in this effort, but I would say they're all playing a pivotal role. The Department of Homeland Security, we don't have a Health and Human Services Secretary confirmed yet. When he is, he will play a pivotal role, but a whole team at HHS, as you know. So this is being coordinated in part from our national security team, but ultimately it's the president who makes decisions about the policy. That's why he asked the team to go to the border and why he asked to receive a briefing, and that's something, as I noted, that happened this morning. Go ahead.
Thanks. I have a follow-up on implementation of the relief package and then a question on the equal rights amendment.
Okay.
On the relief package implementation, were there specific lessons that President Biden, when he was in charge of doing this in 2009, that he learned about that effort that will be applied to this effort, particularly in terms of efficiency and reducing waste and fraud, that kinds of things, but in general, any specific lessons that he learned other than it's good to have one person in charge?
Sure. It is structured very differently, as you remember, and I'm sure many people remember. A big chunk of the Recovery Act was around shovel-ready projects. This is, of course, a very different type of bill. I think some of the lessons we're already implementing, including having a point person in charge, including ensuring there's a sustained campaign that is not just about the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States speaking about the benefits, but that really engages our partners and allies, whether it's governors or mayors, local community leaders, to ensure there is effective implementation and communication about the package. He also wants to lift up, and this is something that's been important to him in general, but is very applicable to this package, members of his cabinet, so that they can be front-facing and play a very public role in engaging with the public and ensuring they understand components and pieces of a package like this. There are pieces in this package that, of course, are related to helping veterans. There are pieces of this package that relate to helping rural communities, and he wants to ensure that members of his cabinet are playing key roles there. That's something that, of course, was done a little bit in 2009, but can definitely be built on, and I think we will venture to do that.
Thanks. And then on the Equal Rights Amendment, the House is expected to vote soon, I think next week, on eliminating the now expired deadline for ratification. And of course, Virginia last year became the 38th state to ratify, but last year the Justice Department issued a memo saying that we can't do that, that if the only way to add this ERA to the Constitution is to start the ratification process over. My question is whether the administration is going to rescind that memo, as some Democrats have asked him to do.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. I will have to talk to our team about that and get an update on it, which we'll venture to do for you after the briefing. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. A couple questions on behalf of the print pool for reporters who couldn't be here, and then one of my own. Jesse Hellman with Modern Healthcare wanted to know, when President Biden is with the executives today from Johnson & Johnson and Merck, does he plan to press them on the increasing costs of prescription drugs, and does he plan to bring up his own agenda to lower drug prices?
The primary focus of this meeting is on working together, the two companies who have long been competitors, working together to ensure the efficient and effective manufacturing of vaccines.
Okay, and Tommy Christopher from Media had a question on the filibuster. Said that President Biden expressed some openness to filibuster reform during the campaign. I know you've said more recently that it's not his preference to change the rules, but he wants to know if the John Lewis Voting Rights Act represents a red line. If Republicans do not support that, if that does not move forward in the Senate, is that a red line that would prompt him to consider filibuster reform rather than filibuster?
Well, the president's preference is not to make changes to the filibuster rules. He believes that voting rights and access to voting, ensuring it's easier for the American people, is enough of a huge priority and should be for everyone. That's why he signed some executive orders, used the power of the presidency to do that this weekend, and he is hopeful that Democrats and Republicans can work together to get that done.
And then one last question on the overall agenda. I know you were saying earlier, when you look at Build Back Better, you're sort of thinking through kind of what's next. But broadly speaking, is infrastructure the next big legislative priority on Capitol Hill for this administration? There's also pressure for an immigration bill to go through. What's next for you guys? What is the next big priority after the bill that you're hoping to sign, the president's hoping to sign on Friday?
It's a very popular question, understandably, but our focus is on getting the American Rescue Plan implemented. We will have more to say. The president will have more to say on his Build Back Better agenda and what the components of that look like, what the size, the proposals, the order of events will be, but I don't have anything to preview for you.
Does that come before an immigration bill on Capitol Hill?
Well, I don't have a legislative order to preview for you either. I will say, given all of the conversations we're having, understandably, about the border and the questions about the border, in the president's proposed immigration package, he has a funding to address the root causes in the region, as we talked about a little bit earlier. He has a pathway to citizenship, or proposes a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, and he also proposes an investment in smart security. So given all of the concern by many in Congress about immigration and what's happening at the border, that sure seems like a good time to move that initiative forward. Go ahead in the back.
Thank you, Jen. I understand you don't want to call it a crisis from the podium, but what do you say to Border Patrol agents at the border, especially those within the union, who are calling it a crisis and who are saying that they're overworked and there's just too many encounters day in and day out?
We are saying that we recognize that incumbent upon us in this administration is to continue to work day and night to expedite the process of ensuring there are the resources and processes in place to move children from the Border Patrol facilities to the shelters. We are saying that it is incumbent upon our administration to look for additional facilities that can safely house children, and incumbent upon us to ensure that we are communicating effectively and efficiently to the region, as Ambassador Jacobson talked about at the top of this briefing. And those are all focuses of the president on down, every single day.
The Mexican government today reports that over 4,000 unaccompanied minors were actually deported back to Mexico between January and March. Can you confirm that those were done under the previous administration? Were any of those unaccompanied minors deported under the Biden administration?
I know that CBP provides numbers and data on a regular basis, and I think there's more data coming soon from there, so I would certainly send you to them for any statistics and data. Our policy is that we don't turn children under 18 away at the border. And of course, as you know, though, even if when they are in homes of family members or in sponsored homes, that they still can go through processing and may need to return home.
And on the stimulus package, if I may, one last question. I think this came up yesterday, but I wanted to re-ask the question. Now that the stimulus package is passed and many undocumented immigrants are not benefited in any way by the money that's going out, does the president plan any executive action or anything else to do to help that population?
Sorry, I missed part of the last sentence.
Sure. Now that the stimulus package has passed and the undocumented population, many of the millions, are not benefited in any way, does the president plan any executive actions or anything else to help that population?
Well, certainly I think the president's priority, given he proposed an immigration bill on the first day, is to create a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants, of course, in this country. He's also been clear that ensuring that everybody in this country is vaccinated and receives access to the COVID-19 vaccine is a key priority. And of course, this is just the beginning of his agenda, but I don't have anything more to preview for you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Given the current progress on vaccination around the world, would the president consider organizing his climate summit in person in DC here for it to have more impact?
I don't think we have any. I think at this point the intention is to do it remotely, I believe, and I don't think there's an intention to change that, but I'm happy to check on that for you.
And do you know roughly how many heads of state are expected to participate, and if the Chinese president would be one of them?
I don't have any more details on the summit. I know it's coming up in about 6 weeks. 5 weeks, and I expect as we get closer, we'll have more to preview. Good. Go ahead in the back.
Yeah, just to follow up on the filibuster. So
Sure.
you've said many times that President Biden's preference is not to change the rules around the filibuster, but if the next big pieces of his agenda are stymied in the Senate, are there changes to the filibuster that he can live with, such as talking filibuster?
Well, the president believes that there are a range of issues where there's a historic precedent of Democrats and Republicans working together, whether it's infrastructure, as we've been talking about, or modernizing the immigration system. He's obviously had a number of bipartisan meetings in the Oval Office, so that's where his energy and focus will be moving forward. Go ahead in the back.
Yeah, thank you. A Saudi court just upheld a travel ban concerning a dissident, a woman, released from prison weeks ago. Is it a sign that the White House message regarding the human rights abuse in the kingdom is not strong enough?
You were referring to a human rights activist who was released from prison?
Yes, but who's not able to travel outside the kingdom.
I would have to look into more specific details of that. I know we were pleased with the release, but I'd have to look into more specific details of the travel restrictions. Go ahead.
Do you have any sort of ETA for when the next cabinet secretaries will be approved, and when are you going to start nominating ambassadors?
Go ask our friends in the Senate. We expect that some will move forward with, and we are hopeful, I should say, that we will get a couple of additional cabinet members confirmed in the coming days or over the course of the next week. The president's looking forward to that. We're certainly looking forward to at some point having a full cabinet meeting. The president hasn't made any decisions about ambassadorial nominees, so I don't expect them to be confirmed anytime soon, given we have to nominate them first.
Are you talking about Becerra and Catherine Tai?
Well, again, it's really up to the Senate on the timeline for that, but we are hopeful that they move forward with the remaining members of the cabinet, given we are almost 2 months into an administration.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, the last one.
Just to follow up on something that Ambassador Jacobson said.
Sure.
And I think you may have gotten a note about this, that the first time she said that the border is not closed, and she then, when she was speaking in Spanish, and then later on spoke in Spanish again and said the border is closed. I mean, it seems like she, I guess, misspoke the first time considering your overall message, but are you concerned that now that she's misspoken that is going to be, picked up and disseminated across the Spanish-speaking world as a message from the administration?
Well, given she also said that the border is closed, we're hopeful that that is what will be picked up, and that has clearly and consistently been our message, so that is certainly our hope.
Still, at the same time that you're having a messaging difficulty around this issue, does that just make it a little bit harder?
We certainly hope not. We have the power of the media here to make sure you're communicating effectively with the messages, and as we know, we all have moments where we say something slightly differently than we would like to, and we quickly try to correct it to make it easier and effective for all of you who are just trying to communicate what the administration's goals and policies are. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.